So, Jill, do you want to begin?
Managing the classroom with the aid of music. We're not talking about music in terms of it being entertaining. When you hear and interact with music, it literally changes you. For example, I can play the frequency of niacin, exact frequency. You listen and your face will flush, as if you have taken that supplement that flushes your face. You don't need to take the supplement. You can hear it and have a physical reaction. There's a lot of things that we can do with music and sounds to help manage a classroom. And we're going to divide them into 3 categories. The first is going to be binaural beats. And that is when you have 2 different frequencies close to your ears so that your head's in the way, so that your right ear can't hear what your left ear's hearing and vice versa. That will be one category. Then we'll go into pitches, and we'll also go into rhythm patterns. They're all tools. Binaural beats. Again, this is when you have 2 fairly low pitches and they're deep tones, and you need headphones because it's very important that the right brain doesn't hear what the left brain hears, because we've evolved for I don't know how many thousands of years. We've not had headphones, save maybe 20 years ago. So our bodies have not evolved for that. What happens when we hear slightly different off frequencies, low pitches in headphones, is that it startles our brain and it kind of wakes up and the frequencies are subtracted. So if you heard 20 cycles per second in this ear and let's say 5 in this ear, they'll subtract. So you'll hear 15 cycles per second all by itself. 15 cycles per second doesn't mean much. However, the tone is now produced by your brain hemispheres, not outside. So it's literally a brain frequency, and it will alter and soon become alpha, beta, delta, theta. It'll affect the consciousness of the individual. So you can calm someone right down. Or if somebody's depressed, you can give them energy. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's really magical here is that you've just utilized both the right and left brain hemispheres. In order for 20 seconds to subtract 5 seconds, they both have to be coordinated, full up and running, and working together as one unit. You just took their IQ up. So the mere usage of binaural beats rounds out and expands brain capacity.
Wow. Cool.
Just so you know what binaural beats sounds like, they sound like a very low hum. Think of like a hum in a refrigerator. It's a hum that you can ignore, not really pay attention to, and yet pay attention to the teacher. It's also not important to have the volume high. It works on very low tones. So you can have and that's kind of what it sounds like. Just like a in the background.
Right.
So when you're using binaural beats, and you can access them through a sound and light machine, I have them on my website, jillswingsoflight.com, sound and light machines, and they will put frequencies in your eyes, in your ears, and can take you down to an extremely calm state. I don't know, maybe if somebody's really hyper, they could do this a little bit right before the classroom starts. Another company called Monroe sells CDs. However, you have to have the individual units with headphones. So binaural beats can take you into normal waking conscious, kind of a slower one where you're more alert, more apt to learn and pick up stuff, alpha. And then you can go into even a theta. Probably is all you'd want to go into a classroom. Some kids might fall asleep at theta, but some might go into a heightened awareness and kind of like a super learning state. So you could experiment with the theta brainwaves. But at any rate, you can take down a hyperactive child in a minute. Wow, how cool is that?
Yeah, really.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
So, okay, so I'll just move on. So that's binaural beats. There are also many universities that have studied binaural beats. So it's the topic of binaural beats is loaded with all kinds of Ivy League studies. And they've even found certain frequencies in which you learn better. So on the sound and light machine, you can set the dial for learning, and like listening to Mozart or something, your intake and your IQ goes up.
Mhm.
You can also set it to a frequency to get rid of a really bad habit. Again, these universities have studied when, let's say, somebody needs to quit smoking or get off drugs, or whatever, they need to get rid of an addiction. There are certain frequencies that when the brain operates at that precise frequency, it's quite easy to get rid of a bad habit. So there's also a setting for change. Some more cool things about binaural beats. The downside being everybody got to have headphones and some type of device.
Mhm.
Okay, so we ready to move on? Do you have any questions, or should we go on to the new category? Okay.
I'm ready to move on. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Alrighty, let's talk about rhythms. We tend to think again that music's entertainment, and whoever thought of that, I think, has horns, a little red outfit, and a spiky tail.
Yeah, really.
Music changes you very much. Music changes our rhythms. And why are rhythms important? Our heartbeat, our breathing, our digestion, our body repair, all these things are triggered by cycles, often nature cycles. For example, sleeping can be affected by light, and how our body repairs is affected by, let's say, the digestion cycle. So you have all these rhythms, and they all have to work together for us to function. Think if you go on a plane ride and you get out of time sync, you get out of rhythm with the sunlight, you really feel bad. And the studies show that significant health issues occur with any rhythm that's not really syncing with nature. And one of a beautiful way to alter your rhythms is music. Just like you have a snappy little beat, and next, you're snapping your fingers or dancing. The rhythm will animate you. So let's say you have a hyperactive classroom, and they're kind of all talking fast and have a really fast rhythm. Da da la la la. You can start to play music that has, let's say, a rhythm of like a heartbeat. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. Like it or not, in 3-4 minutes, that whole class is going to start to match that rhythm beat. And again, I have a ton of music on my site, jillswingsoflight.com. Most of it is that slow, beautiful, calming heartbeat rhythm in between 1 and 2 cycles per second, because that's where most of your body health occurs.
Mhm. I was listening to something last night you had done about the forest. I don't remember the name exactly, but it was really beautiful and helped me fall asleep. Yeah, it was, I had sprained my ankle. It was a little uncomfortable. And just listening to that, it just lulled me to sleep. So I can affirm that, yes, it does work.
Yes. So anyway, the rhythms are healthy. They alter you, and they can affect the mood and consistency in a classroom. Okay, let's talk about one other thing, just a thought. Your left brain hemisphere understands language and mathematics. Your right brain hemisphere is the holistic picture. It's the big picture. So perfect when you're doing art and music class, you want kids in their using their right brain hemisphere. So you recall that the left ear goes to the right brain and the right brain goes to the left ear. It's a crisscross. So if you would like students to be in art class or music class, you could put in a an earplug in your right ear, and that's going to block the left ear. So now you've just muted sequential logical thinking, and you get them in a dreamy state. Likewise, in math class, you might want to do the opposite. You might want to put the one earphone or earplug, in the left ear, because that's going to block the right ear. The work of Dr. Tomatis, an ear, nose, throat doctor in France, he died about 2001. He was a young man after World War II. He has quite a bit of scientific evidence on his site at tomatis.com, showing that stress, trauma, and learning disabilities are often linked to hearing. So just are you right-handed or left-handed? People are naturally right-brained and left-brained. We just don't think of it. But if you're right-brained, the pathway for sound that goes into right brain, which, like if you have a stroke and you lose your left brain, you cannot speak, you cannot add, you can't even punch numbers on a phone. Your right brain doesn't understand or process any logical or sequential information. So if a student is primarily right-brained, they can't understand much what the teacher's saying. And eventually the sound goes and it recircuits around through the body and comes into the left brain. So what that does is it gives you a delay. So the kids that are strongly right-brained, they hear the teacher, but just imagine an echo, a tunnel, or, after a while it would give you quite a headache. And again, one way to correct this hearing process, particularly in classes where you have sequential stuff, spelling, mathematics, anything that's logical and sequential, the old earplug trick might be an essential way to reroute people's hearing so that the kids that are hyper don't have that tunnel and can at least hear the teacher as the teacher's speaking, which should make a huge difference. I think Alfred Tomatis was getting rid of various learning disabilities, like anywhere from 85 to 90% on most of them.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Hearing. I'm sorry to interrupt. That's phenomenal. Yeah.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is with hearing.
Jill, can you spell that doctor, please? The Tomatis. Can you spell that for me, please?
Tomatis. He was a young man right after after World War II. And his father was an opera singer. So he worked on a lot of musicians. And he found anybody that was Jewish, of course, had been in hiding. And they were all deaf at the sounds of the sirens that took them to the death camps. And from that, he concluded that when we have a really bad trauma, we can literally, physically tune out the sound of somebody's voice or a sound that hurts us. So let's say you have a child whose mother's very abusive, and your voice comes in the same frequency as mom's. Well, if he's tuned out mom on that one little cycle per second, he's also tuned out you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Tomatis had this really great thing. It was called an electronic ear. About 15 years ago, it was $8,000 for a treatment. But there was a lady, Patricia Jondry from Steel and Steel Company. She also is now dead. But in essence, she made tapes. And what she did was, like, if you imagine an old-fashioned stereo, and you took the treble and the bass button and you just turn it up. So it's really tinty high, really bass, high bass, high bass. And she replicated this on tapes because CDs don't do analog frequencies. You don't want it on a CD. You don't want it on a radio. You want it on a tape or a record player. And anyway, or better yet, live. Get classical music out there and just, if you tune it up and down, what that does to the ear hairs is that it exercises them and it makes them stronger and grow.
Interesting.
And each cycle per second that you hear from 100 to 20,000, it's a separate ear hair. And so by hours of music in which somebody has just twisted the treble and the bass, you restore the frequencies that someone has lost in trauma. And that's really important because let's say some little boy's father is very abusive. He's not going to be able to relate to men in the same pitch range. What if he has that pitch range? You know, what if his brothers do?
Yeah.
And to restore our input is, it's healing on so many levels.
Mm-hmm.
So many levels.
That's miraculous healing right there.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. And it's such a simple practice. I think it would be easy enough to replicate in a classroom setting and do something like that. Erin and I were talking, and there is a focus now on what is it, trauma-based curriculum, Erin? I'm looking over here at the phone. I'll put you up here so I can see you up here. But that just resonates with me that we won't know necessarily who has been impacted by trauma when they come to us. And Erin has worked with young children. I work with adults and had worked with them in adult education. They come in with obviously traumatic issues that took place a long time ago, also coming in with learning differences or learning disabilities. And what you're presenting right now, I'm really in awe as I listen to it, and I thought, what a useful tool. I wished I would have had that with me when I did that work. That really, I think, would have been beneficial. And in the classroom environment I was in, we had to do a research study each year. This would have been an excellent research study to see how people responded to. Maybe teachers can do this in some settings.
It would be easy enough to either buy this Patricia Gendry's tapes or make them yourself if you have a tape machine. You know, get classical music. I would definitely use like early classical and just switch it like this and then play it during the class and everybody gets the healing. Nobody even notices.
And how do you spell Patricia's last name?
Gendry. I think it's Joundry. Patricia Gendry. Your company is Steel, Steelen Steel. And again, she's been dead for about 10 years. So if you can't find her tapes, you can make them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm kind of ready to move on to talk about frequencies. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Well, first of all, I have a book, The Lost Ways of Time, in which I talk about, particularly in the chapter about classical music, I talk about how each composer bestows a specific gift. For example, Bach's music is very mathematical. You might have one melody starting at different times, but it kind of like intersects in a beautiful way. The other thing about Bach is that he works with rhythm, so 5 against 6, and so he's mathematical in his music, and his gifts are mathematical in nature. Mozart's another one, though his gift in IQ is a little bit more well-rounded, not quite so analytical. Beethoven comes in with compassion. There were no charities in Europe prior to Beethoven. They weren't interested in the compassion for the orphan. They were kind of a burden. But afterwards, there was compassion. There was compassion in jails afterwards. So in the book, The Lost Ways of Time, I go in how music throughout the ages can alter you, and the specific is by composer, so that you can, if you have a specific benefit, there might be a composer whose music delivers it. And that's what I've done, is that because you ingest frequencies, they become who you are, physically, emotionally, and mentally. You can create music to do things like tune your muscles, to give you vitamins. And let me give you a story about a vitamin. Sherry Edwards, who has extraordinary hearing, abnormal hearing. She hears like a dolphin. So she can hear little tiny sounds out of pitch range and lower volume than you and me. She can hear little sounds coming out of your ears called otoacoustic emissions. They're confirmed by science. And out of your ears comes like a broadcast of frequencies that tell your whole body, like a radio station, okay, I just cut my toe. Let's start, patching that hole in the toe. So with this frequencies coming out of the ear, it's kind of like a diagnosis. So she could walk by someone and say, oh, they have diabetes, because she would recognize the tones that correct diabetes. Mm-hmm. So she has this extraordinary healing. Her stuff is called Sound Health Options. Anyway, she developed software so that other people can benefit from her gift. But I'm going to tell one of her stories. She tells of a client that came to her because he was beating up his mom. It was an 8-9-year-old kid. And she found, when she looked at his voice, one frequency that was way out of whack, because you can also look at every frequency in your body and see what you're missing. Mm-hmm. So she found that this one frequency, and she gave it to the child in a headphone. He's got a little headphone and tone box. And as long as he had that on, he was very good to his mother. As soon as he took it off, he was back. So she looked again at that frequency and found that an octave higher was one of the vitamin Bs. So she gave it to him an octave higher and had him take these vitamin B supplements, and his behavior problem never returned. Think about that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That impact, to have it never return again, and it was like almost immediate that sound had that impact.
So the lack of the sound was he was falling apart.
Yes.
So yeah. Keeping that in mind, I have about 14 musical CDs that all have different purposes, and I'm thinking I should maybe even describe them, because music is so cheap and they're so beneficial. My first two that I did, I used nature patterns, star patterns, spiral patterns, and all of those things can convert to sound. So in the Paint Your Soul music, I have sounds found in nature. Anybody who goes in nature for a while will find it calming and quieting. Mm-hmm. So the music has the same impact. It's very beautiful, very kind of like slow, relaxing. And if you take Kirlian photography, it fills your aura up with white light. Mm-hmm. So what does white light in your aura mean? It means you're healthy on many levels. It calms, completes, and sedates. And the second one I did, Stardust, it does the same impact. This one has the frequencies of planets and their orbits and their motions, tapings of NASA. And it has oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, also, those frequencies. And again, it's the same kind of thing. With Kirlian photography, it fills up your aura. It's a feel good. It's kind of a balancing. Then I have two other CDs. One's called Healing Flowers Volume 1 and Healing Flowers Volume 2. This music is taken off the ancient Greeks. Pythagoras and his crew healed by healing the motions. So if you had an ulcer, they would get rid of your worry, not worry about the hole in your tummy. So the Healing Flower Symphonies puts that in action, and it takes virtues like patience versus impatience. It creates the feeling of impatience because it's literally inside of you someplace, and it shakes it. It's a little irritating for a second, and then it leaves, and then it comes in with patience. So it's very calming. And then it has the frequencies of Bach flower remedies. And again, they're very calming. Then, let me see, what else do I have? I have music with the DNA Dreams, with the frequencies of nucleotides balancing the DNA in every cell of your body. I have one with Seasons of the Sky that has all the frequencies, and we talked before about people missing frequencies and how that can cause all kinds of problems. So I have an album called Seasons in the Sky. So with each C, C sharp, D, D sharp, each key signature, which is very unusual to hear. And then I have NASA tapings of all the planets, different star systems, and the frequencies of their orbits. And then I have another one called Echoes of God. And in that music, Dean Hammer found the God gene. It's literally a gene, BMA2, BMAT2. And it's found in very well-evolved divine, like Dalai Lama kind of people. And you can amplify that in yourself, and that's in music. So that's the kind of stuff that I have to offer. Again, it's calming, it's healing on a variety of levels. And I guess that's my presentation.
You have provided us with, I think, not only information, but resources that we can tap into and that teachers can tap into to bring in a whole new dimension of how sound can impact healing in the classroom. And we truly appreciate the time you've taken today to meet with us. Namaste.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes. And we look forward to sharing this information. We'll give you some feedback as to what takes place.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Jill.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to